challenge your imagination to come alive and to battle with the creatures of Dungeons and Dragons. Grapple against the forces of evil as a Marvel Comics superhero. Hunt adventure and glory as Indiana Jones. The all-new role-playing games of TSR and Dungeons and Dragons. Unleash the power of your imagination.
Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position. You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created. Your skin grows cold from your first glimpse of the enormous beast. It's a product of your imagination. Survival depends on a quick, decisive move. Your choices are limited. Stand and fight, or run. Use your lightning bolt. Victory is yours.
Win the treasure.
TSR Hobbies, Dungeons and Dragons games. Products of your imagination.
Time has come to earn our valor, people.
You summoned a succubus from hell!
Sorry.
I'm out of here. How awesome was that?
Dungeons and Dragons ride! Wow, neat!
Give me a break.
I don't like this!
Whoa! What's happening?
Oh!
Where are we? Look out!
Fear not, Ranger. Barbarian, magician, thief, cavalier, and acrobat.
Who was that?
That was Venger, the force of evil. I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
What kind of BS is acrobat for a character class?
Whoa, hey.
That was such a wild ride watching all of those back to back.
I know, right? Like, that was such a crazy one. Oh,
Incredible.
man. But yes, welcome everybody to the evening block of Pop Con Con for Saturday night. My name is Sean. I am one half of Pop Psycho Baubles. Me and my wife Laura have actually put together this whole convention. We got a bunch of our friends to come hang out with us and talk about a wide variety of topics. And today, this evening, right now, we're talking about D&D tips and tricks for players, specifically if you're starting out for the first time or if you just need something to help spice up what you're going to do. And I would love to introduce everybody on the panel. So we're just going to go around real quick. I'm going to say hello to them, and they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. So starting off to my direct page left is going to be the mighty Jerd himself, my buddy Jeff. Jeff, say hello and let them know a little bit about you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff Mueller, a.k.a. the Mighty Jerd. I'm an actor, a writer, a podcaster, a martial arts and fitness guy. And honestly, I am just someone who loves role-playing games. I absolutely love them. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. And then to his screen left is somebody that you might have seen on a couple of panels already with us. And she actually is part of Heart, or you're the owner or you're part of Heartsinger Games?
I am Heartsinger Games.
You are Heartsinger Games, and that is Anne. Anne, please say hello and let them know about you.
Hey guys, I'm Anne Richmond, aka the head bard in charge, Heartsinger at Heartsinger Games, as you now know. I stream tabletop RPGs and story-based video games on Twitch, and I put out D&D focused content every week on YouTube. And I am in a few different RPG podcasts as a player, including the Starfinder podcast and the new and very spooky Lost Mountain Saga Vassin podcast. And I also, behind the scenes, work as a producer for the Glass Cannon Network.
Fantastic. Yeah, you were saying that like this is pretty much your full-time gig now. You just get to be like a gamer all the time.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
It's cool, and it's very busy.
Well, fantastic. Well, welcome to the panel. And then directly south of her is my buddy Michael. I have been on many panels with this man, but I will let him introduce you. Michael, please say hello to the audience and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Michael Faulkner. I'm a writer and a podcaster from the Atlanta area, and
I just rolled a 12 for initiative, if that matters. I'm a blogger as well. All my writing and stuff for Pop Culture's on Creative Criticality, which is listed right there in the nameplate. I also have a project on there called the Timestamps Project, where I'm going through Doctor Who episode by episode from the very beginning. I've been running that for about 6 years now, and I'm going to be finishing up the Tennant era this year. So you can find all that at creativecriticality.net.
There you go. And then to his screen right is my good buddy Dodger. Dodger, say hello and introduce yourself, even though I know most of us pretty much know who you are. But please, absolutely let everybody who doesn't know about you know a little bit about yourself.
Everybody's so good at introducing themselves. I'm always so terrible at it. Hi, I'm Dodger. I am mostly a streamer. I stream pretty much every day, just like hanging out, chatting about life or playing games. But I've also been playing a variety of different TTRPGs for like 10 years, something like that. DM'd a couple of times, which was fun. I would love to do more of that, but yeah, perpetual player for the most part. And I'm currently on a couple of different stream shows as well as offline ones. So yeah, so hopefully I can bring something valuable to this conversation.
I absolutely believe that you will. And then finally, rounding out our panel is a buddy of mine who literally has been playing in my games since he was a teenager, right? I think you were a teenager when we started
18.
playing with me. Yeah, he was 18 when he actually started playing with us. That is my buddy Nathan. Nathan, say hello and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Nathan Laws. I am the host of the 42 Cast, which is your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. And that's where I and a rotating cast of people will talk about just about any geeky topic. I'm also the host of the Time Streams podcast, where we're watching, my friend Juliet and I are watching through every episode of Doctor Who from the beginning. So kind of similar to what Michael's doing, but except we're doing it in a podcast format.
Right, but we're putting Dodger between you two so that there's not going to be warring factions. It'll be a house divided.
I was going to say, I want to play that Marvel Comics role-playing game that they showed in the commercial. I didn't know
Wasn't
about
that cool? Yes, yes.
I had that game. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I had the Indiana Jones game for a hot second. My cousin had it, and then they gave it to me, but I never really got it. I just kind of read through it like, oh, Indiana Jones is really cool. So, yeah. But welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get into the show proper, I did want to do something because we haven't mentioned this a whole lot, but since we are doing the evening show before we get into the block, I did want to talk about the fact that the reason why we have Pop Con going on right now is that Laura and I actually build a bunch of different artwork and we sell it at conventions. But with the convention season being dead right now, we thought this would be a fun way of celebrating the opening of our online store. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, definitely go check out the link below. It's in the scroll. But I also have some examples here. The wife came over while we were doing the intros and she wanted me to show a couple things. So if you guys have never seen any of our Pixel Bits before, here I'm going to go full screen. I'm going to go full hawk for like 1 minute and then we'll get back to it. But so we have like really cool things like the Sephiroth handmade pixelated statue that we made, stuff like that. I also have a really cool cloud that we've made. And we have quite a few of these that you can pick up. And then I have to show you these people. These are amazing. Laura makes these amazing clocks out of old school records. And she uses actual comic artwork. So this is Catwoman. And then she actually pours resin artwork. It is gorgeous. They're absolutely phenomenal. And this one, if I didn't show it, she would hurt me. This one is the Baby Yoda. Look at that gorgeousness. Isn't that great? But if you like any of that, please go check it out. Just follow the link below. It'll be rotating through all the shows. Check that out. Or you can just go to the Pop Cycle Baubles website, popcyclebaubles.com, and then simply click on the shop link. So thank you, folks, for letting me hawk my wares there for a hot second. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. And, you know, I'm going to give the floor to Jeff because, Jeff, we had so many things we want to talk about during the DM panel, and there were just rules and all this stuff. And Jeff's like, I have notes. So Jeff, you had some notes for what would make really good player choices. So I want to give you first crack at this. What are some of your examples of really good notes for players as they go on and start making characters?
All right. So I have three. Three what I consider my cardinal player tips when people ask me, you know, they're rules agnostic. This is for any tabletop game. Doesn't matter what system you're playing. Most importantly, I think the top thing is know why your character is there. What's ultimately driving them to a life of adventure? And more importantly, what circumstances would be there to make them hang up their adventuring gear? And if you make your decisions in the game with those always in the back of your mind, even if you never divulge those to the other players at the table, it makes for a more realistic experience, I think. So that's my top tip. My second tip is to be engaged through the entire session. I don't believe that there's ever a time, even in combat, where you're waiting for your turn.
Right.
Doesn't exist. The entire session is your turn. And kind of conversely to that, on the other side of that coin is my third tip, which is understand that the story isn't about you, singular. It's about you, plural, everyone at the table.
Right.
And understand that if you are the other player's biggest fans and you enable them for success and give them assists by sharing the narrative spotlight, that ultimately everyone gets a better experience at the table, and people will want to bring you back. They will want to continue to game with you, which ultimately is kind of the goal of being a good player. You're there to help everyone else out. And if you're doing it, chances are it becomes infectious and everyone else will start doing it, and they'll throw you the assist occasionally. And then it becomes this thing to where you're not just waiting for my turn to do something and scrolling on your phone. You're engaged the whole time. And before you know it, the session's done and it was awesome.
Right, absolutely. We do have one from the Peanut Gallery real quick, which is Christina, one of my perpetual players. Don't play like me. Stay away from ice gnomes. So let me give context for that story. Christina has been playing with us for a decade now, and she is by far my most killed player. I have killed her as a PC more times than any other player in the history of me playing role-playing games. I think she's in double digits at this point. Double digits. Yeah, she gets wiped out a lot. But the thing is that she loves, like, it's almost like a badge of pride for her. Like, how am I going to die this time? So she actually goes in expecting to die, which is funny because right now she has a character that we keep waiting for her to keel over dead, and the character's flourishing. So maybe it's like this reverse psychology. She's built up enough of a head of steam now where she's going to live on for a long time. But yes, that was one of those great comments I wanted to bring up. But Anne, how about you? Do you have, let's say again, 2-3 tips that you could think of that would be really good for players if they're starting out, or how to be better players in a group?
Sure. This is one tip, and it is a something that has really served me well, and I think dives into what Jeff is talking about understanding why you're there. If you are someone who has trouble making character choices or understanding like how to, not everybody is an actor. Not everybody understands how to feel something. I know that's crazy,
right?
But, that may not be what you're looking for. But if you want to give yourself a compass rose to kind of lead you through the campaign, answer these questions: who wants to see me fail? What would I kill to have or to know? And why do I have to be an adventurer? Because it is a shitty job with a high death rate. So why are you willing to risk it all? Those are the 3 questions you need to understand, and they will place you in any moment. And all of that goes back, to acting, and it's about having an objective. Just what are you trying to achieve? That objective can change throughout the story, but you need to be able to have a clear idea of it in order to really connect with your character and understand the difference between I am someone who needs to make this decision for my character, and I am that guy at the table who is just playing an RPG like it's a single player game.
Right. And that's never fun. We talked about this during the DM hour, which is don't be that guy, as we call it, be somebody who shares the stage with the rest of your cast. But it's interesting. And when you brought up find a reason to be there, my wife, Laura, loves playing D&D and role-playing games for the combat. She could give 2 shakes about the role-playing side of it. So when we're not in combat, her gimmick is where's the closest tavern and how bougie is their food. So she has made lists of her favorite taverns all around our different areas, and where could I go and find my bougiest food? And do they have turn down services? Do they have a masseur there and stuff? So like I have to come up with crazier and crazier, like as a DM, I have to come up with these little just weird little foibles for her so that way she has something to engage with, but she loves it. Like we'll be in deep role-playing moments, and then I'll say, pause, Laura, how's your beef stroganoff? She's like, it's amazing. I'm going to get a massage afterwards. I'm like, fantastic. And then we'll cut back to the other scene. She's engaged. She's she's having a good time. You know, they're role playing whatever their scenario is, and she's just waiting to get the call down to beat the crap out of something, and everybody's able to have fun.
Yeah.
So
and I think
that's definitely important.
Those questions are the difference between I've written a 10-page backstory, which like do what you need to do, right? And those are the critical pieces of information that your GM needs to help you have an amazing time.
So there's Laura piping in there a little bit. My character has needs. Okay, so let's go to Nathan next. Nathan, what would be a tip or two that you have about how to just be a better player, especially if you're a newbie or maybe even a veteran trying to, twist things up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, since I'm spending more of my time on the other side of the screen these days as a DM, I mean, it kind of teeing off of what, has already been mentioned. It helps me out so much as a DM when you actually know who your character is and can actually tell me who your character is.
Yeah.
So that all of that, yes, know your motivations, know why you're there, know all of that kind of stuff, because I can't help set you up unless I know who you are and what you're looking for. But that aside, because that's already kind of been covered, and this one is a little controversial, but I think it has always come to good choices, both in my games and playing in your game, Sean. Don't be afraid of conflict. And by that, I don't mean don't be a jerk. Don't just like steamroll over people and don't, piss people off just for the sake of it, because nobody likes that. Don't be afraid that if your character wants something a particular way and that is their motivation, don't be like, oh no, because I don't want to like mess with the party or whatever, and I don't want there to be any kind of friction. The best games I've ever been involved in on both sides of the table. And believe me, on the DM side, I'll go get a sandwich and stuff while people are arguing. I mean, it's great, and I'll just be like, I'm listening, guys. It's great. It's fun. But because that, leads to so many, interesting choices. But I've also seen people just be like, oh, well, I don't want to make so-and-so mad at me. And like, if your character's going to do this, then let them do it. Don't let that out-of-character stuff, influence you, from
in
doing what your character would do. Right, exactly.
Right. No, I think that's great advice. Absolutely. And I know exactly which game Nathan's referring to. And we'll talk about that later.
I think there's two, maybe.
Well, I'm talking. Oh, that's true. There is two, isn't there? Shit. No, there is. There's a couple, actually. But I was thinking of The Great Divide.
Yes.
And you know what I'm talking about. The Great Divide, yes.
That was the best. Like, it totally changed your game, but for the better.
But we'll talk about that more later if we have a chance, if the conversation lulls, which I don't think it will. But if we get a chance to interject that story, we'll talk about that. But how about you, Dodger? What would be a piece of advice or two that you have for players who are starting out or possibly wanting to look to change things up a little bit?
One of them that I wrote down that everybody has mentioned is like, fully commit and take moments for yourself, but also stand back and support everybody else to take their own moments. A big one for me is that as a group, you are telling a story and failures are part of a story. Don't be scared of that nat one, right? Like, don't be scared of making like kind of stressful choices, because that contributes to the story. Right. And a DM doesn't want to see you fail. They want to tell a great story with you. Right. So like, don't consider them as failures. It's a story beat. That has always helped me when I've been like, oh my God, should I do this thing? But like, if I do it and I nail it, it's going to be amazing. But it also might be amazing if I totally bork it. Right. Like,
absolutely. Yes.
You should just go for it.
Yeah, and you know what, Dodger? That entire philosophy is basically how Christina plays. So when we say that Christina dies a lot, that's because she's like, screw it, what happens if it works?
Sure.
And the averages are like 65% it doesn't work. 35% it does. And when it does, she's having she's all ready to go. In fact, she actually just made a comment here. I'm going to pull this up. When we started our new game a couple months ago, the very first session, they were all introduced to each other, and one of the PCs surprised her, and she's a bard, and she basically cast a spell, but she didn't want to do any real damage, so we just kind of came up with this MacGuffin where she played a note so loud, she actually caused the other character's ears to bleed. Didn't mean anything, it was just a fun character moment, but it was something that has now stuck with her, where they know, don't jump the bard, or don't surprise the bard. She's a jumpy one, and it gives them something to unite with. So absolutely, I definitely think that kind of goes to the why not frame of mind a little bit. It's a little bit more fun to be that way. How about you, Sir Michael? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Okay, no problem. So, Michael, how about you? What would be a piece of advice or two that you would have for a new player or somebody looking to kind of mix things up a bit?
Well, I want to kind of parallel off of what a lot of people have said about the characters and developing a good story. I played with some people who, they would build a character, but also had kind of a weakness they'd build into the character, or something they would negotiate with the DM about. So the one woman I'm thinking about, she developed a cleric, and her whole goal was like, I want to help people to succeed by healing them when they're injured in battle. Well, that's great. But her weakness was kind of a Rocket Raccoon thing from Guardians of the Galaxy. I like the shiny things. And so she would be the first one in a battle to sneak off to the side, and she'd negotiate with the DM ahead of time, like, I'm going to go look at these bodies that are laying around. Right. And the DM would slide her a piece of paper. Well, when we got done with the battle and everyone's standing around like, okay, this was great, they'd say, okay, we're going to loot the body. She's like, oh, I got it, guys. And she would figure out what was going on, and we distribute the wealth and go on. Well, she's skimming some off the top here, right? Yeah. That was her thing with skimming some off the top. She wants that new shiny armor off to the side. Or in the case of like, someone falls down almost dead, she's like, hey, you look like you need some help. Yeah, I kind of need some healing. Okay, well, I'll heal you up, but it'll cost you. How about that ruby we picked up in the last encounter? That kind of thing.
Right.
Build those in, because it makes the story better, and it drives your character in a certain direction to do things. My other tip is more practical, and I brought visual aids. Rolling.
Wait, do you want me to get here? Let me go full screen on you. Go ahead. Here you go.
We can, yeah. Rolling dice on tables sometimes gets a little treacherous. You throw a D20 and it falls off the side, and you got to go digging for it. One thing that we thought of to do was those back to school clearance sales they have. Everyone's already back to school. They're Target or Walmart or whoever's trying to get rid of their back to school stuff and free up the Christmas aisles. Go get yourself a pencil case. Like my wife has the Porgs.
Yep.
Right. And I picked up one of the Vault ones. It's just a little more my style. Nice. You can carry your dice and stuff in there to the event that your session you're gonna play, and then you roll into those kind of like a dice tower, and it keeps your dice.
Use a board game box.
Yeah,
just one half of a board game box. You just roll your dice in there. Yep.
Yeah. And that way everyone can still see your dice rolls. You're not trying to be secretive or sneak a 20 somewhere, but at the same time, you're not stalling the game out by throwing your dice off the side of the table.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that is also having good table etiquette, I think, is always a good rule. It's something we don't talk about a lot because it's just kind of assumed you'll pick that up. But good table etiquette, not like pouring your drinks on people or knocking stuff over onto the table. Having a good
does that happen at tables?
Yeah, I was like, what's happening?
Okay,
Who are you
playing?
Sean's games are legend.
Do you want a horror story? Because this was so gnarly. This was about 8 years ago. We were playing in our living room on this table that I'm actually hosting right now. And we were all role playing, and one of our players had a chaw habit. And I was trying to get him to stop doing it, but he was one of those guys who was like, I'll do what I want. And he put his cup on the table, and inevitably...
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scream. I'm sorry. It just came out of me.
No, it's okay. The scream's fine, but it was so bad.
No.
Yeah, and the thing was I had a traumatic experience with something similar to that as a kid. So as soon as the spell hit me, I was like, "You've got to go." And to be fair, shortly thereafter, he left our game permanently. That was just
wow.
But that was just one in many problematic people with that. And I think one of my tip for people as a player. I'm almost always the DM. Very rarely does anybody let me actually play the game because I tend to have an affinity and a talent for actually assembling games. But the thing that I've always seen that I think works best and I take personally to heart is one, don't be that guy. We've talked about that before. I'm sure we'll talk about that again. If you're derailing the group, if you see that the group is having to defer all the time to pursue your interests and they don't get a chance to do something that they like, or you're visibly causing the DM pain because you're just not getting with the program, with the rest of the team who's ready to go and fight the monster, or they want to go and have a night on the town and you're just being that stick in the mud, try to be more with the group. Like if the group is all moving right, don't be the one person who's always going left. It's okay sometimes, but don't make it more difficult than you have to be. Two, and this is the one I would really encourage everybody to take away from this, is invest yourself in your player, in your co-players' characters. really get what their motivations are. You may not be able to influence necessarily what's going on as far as they're trying to experience, they're trying to maybe find an artifact for their god. But if you know that's what's motivating them and you start to investigate things for them, not only will the characters bond, but you will start to really become invested in that player and they'll become invested in your character. So later on down the line, if there's 3 of you and let's say the cleric has really bonded with character A, but not so much with character B because character A is always invested in the cleric storyline, that cleric is going to probably heal them first. And that could be the difference between surviving and not surviving. And just being considerate like that makes the overall game a much more enjoyable experience because you actually feel like people are going to be able to appreciate one another. And you don't feel like your story is just between you and the DM. You feel like your friends are actually participating in that tale. And I think that is really, really, really important. Hold on. Jeff said something in the chat. What is this, Jeff?
You were a delight. The one time you played, I DM'd a charity game. You were fantastic. You deserve more time in the player's seat, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Here's actually one from Laura. This is actually how Laura plays. And you know what? This is actually perfect as a player. Some people feel like if they're not role-playing enough, they're not doing it right. It really isn't this is how you do it. You play the way you feel. Laura likes to say, I want to do X. And then I kind of fill in the blanks because she's always a little reticent to be a role player. She just wants to be there and roll the dice and hit the things and eat the food and get the turn down service kind of stuff, right? So the role playing, she's like, somebody else could do that. So I help her along with that. But that's a very valid way of playing. And that's one of the things that I think we can talk about as far as style. There really is no one answer to how to be a good role player as far as an actual player goes. It really is what is most comfortable for you. Does anybody have anything you'd like to tee up on that with, by any chance?
Well, I know one of the characters that we played with in the same campaign with the shiny stuff cleric. The other character was brand new at what we were doing, and she had really never played a tabletop before. We were rolling into this campaign, and she was playing a rogue because it's an easy class to pick up, and since she didn't understand all the stuff that goes on with the rogue, aside from sneak attacks and all that kind of stuff, there's also traps when you go into dungeons, and she didn't know that she had the skill of checking a trap to see if it was armed or checking the area for traps so we don't get snagged in something. And so as a veteran player, I made it a point in my style for that game to just be like, hold up a second, in game, like as a monk, put my quarterstaff, it's like, wait, before we go, hey, rogue, do you want to go check for traps?
Right.
And the first couple of times I was like, I can do that, kind of breaking the fourth wall. Like, I can, yes, you can. Here it is in the book. Go, just roll the dice and go for it if you feel like you want to do it. And sure enough, every time after that, she started like, oh yeah, we're turning a corner. I'm checking for traps. She learned the rules.
Right.
And that's one way you can help a newbie to learn is so they don't feel intimidated by this thick rule book is like in character, like, hey, you may have forgotten this. You want to check for traps. You want to loot the bodies. You want to do whatever else so you don't miss something.
Yeah. And it's funny because on that same point of view, going back to Laura as an example, she wanted to try playing a rogue. And so she was having that exact same problem. Wait, I can search for traps. I could do this. And after about 3 sessions, she's like, this is just too much thinking. I just want to beat the crap out of something. And so I said, hey, do we just want to do a quick retcon and just make you a straight up, just beater, just be a fighter? And she was like, I don't know. That just seems so basic. And I was like, and I looked her dead in the eyes. I said, look, sometimes being basic is the most liberating thing that you can do as a player. You have no rules to worry about. You just beat the crap out of whatever's in front of you, and everything else is just you having fun. And as soon as we flipped that switch for her, that was it. She was like, this is where I live now. She has had so much fun being a fighter. And that's the fun part about that is if you try character class, as long as the rest of the party doesn't mind, switch it up, rip up that player or transfer the concept and put it in a new character class. There's nothing wrong with doing that, which I think is one of the more interesting things that people don't think about. They think they're locked into a character and they have to stick with it until that character dies. And I don't feel that's really true.
Yep.
And scene. No, okay. Go ahead, Ann. Go, please.
What? Me?
Was it Ann or was it Dodger who was about to say
I think it was Dodger.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dodger, please.
Yeah. I was like, oh, please, God, not me.
No.
Sorry, Dodge. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I've been trying to get my husband's family to play D&D, which has been like a lot of like little mini conversations with them about like what that even is. But I think that they would have a blast with it. But absolutely, I think one of the other things that I had written down as like just a general is that there's no right or wrong way to like go about your first game or any game that you play. But like I've played with people who have gone really hard, have like fully committed to role play, like just straight up said they wanted to do things, and the DM had to be like, well, hold on, you need to make like 5 rolls to do that, right? But like, you know, we're just like, all right, I'm just gonna like do shit and just wait for somebody to say I can't, you know.
Right.
But I've also played with people who are like, okay, I'm going to play something really straightforward, and I'm going to be a bit more reserved so that I can learn the rules. And both are perfectly fine and totally valid. And if, you know, you play something more reserved and then you're like, I kind of want to like bust out of the shell a bit more, or I want to play a new character that's like totally different or something, then that's amazing. Because again, it's supposed to be fun and you're telling a story, and not everybody is going to be, you know, that person who from the age of 5 was in theater classes, right? Like it's going to be different for everybody. And the hope is that everybody finds something about the game that they enjoy and they click with.
And that's the huge part. That is absolutely huge. And actually, Nathan, I was actually about to toss to you, because this actually brings us back down to the character conflict. And sometimes when you have people who really do want to role play, you can roll into conflict, because having people who want to have those role playing experiences isn't necessarily a bad thing. So this is a perfect example for you to tell this story, because I know you love this story.
Okay. So it's been a few more years since, you know, I've told it last, but yeah, so we did like this game over a weekend at the beach, basically. And so this was right after I graduated. A lot of us had graduated. Sean had graduated the year before, and his grandparents had a beach house that we all went to. And so it was
beach
like
house.
Right. And so it was a week. Actually, it was a week. It wasn't a weekend. It was a whole
it was
week
about
of
7
gaming.
days.
Like as we were, you know, we'd go to the beach, we'd do stuff, and then we'd come back and game. And so over the course of this, basically this guy that we've been chasing offers the party, like, you know, the classic movie thing: join me and, you know, gain ultimate power. There were 6 of us. 3 people chose to join him.
Yeah, amazing.
Like, oh my god, you know, like the rest of us are all looking at each other like, oh crap, you know, like this is about. And so this became the greatest thing. Like 3 of us would go off and play video games or whatever in the other room, and the other 3 would like game with Sean, and we'd swap out because now we're like against each other. And so we actually had the most epic session of us plotting against each other the whole time. And now it did get a little, because, you know, we're kind of immature still and whatnot. It did get a little bit problematic with the in-game, like affecting the out-of-game, and nothing was permanent. Like nothing affected it like beyond that week, but during that week we kind of like clicked. You know, so like we formed our 2 little clicks.
Let me put a patina on this for a second, because this is the most hilarious part. So this happened over the span of like 3 different game sessions. So once they flipped, and there's the goodies and the baddies. That was how everything was split for the rest of the weekend. We went out to dinner. Goodies were on one side, baddies were on the other side. They would not sit with each other. They're like, I don't trust you. And I'm like, we got to get to a car. Baddies got to take their own car. They can't sit in the Goodies car. You know, so everything was split up. And probably one of the most hilarious things that happened was one of our players, and oh man, I just realized he just recently passed with like the last year, actually. Our friend Robbie, he had passed.
He's dead?
Oh my god! You don't. Okay, I am so sorry,
I don't
folks.
know anything about that.
I thought you knew. Yeah, no, he actually passed. His diabetes got him. He passed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring down the room. But,
that's big.
Sorry.
I am so sorry. I'm sorry, Nathan. Yeah, but our friend Robbie, he had been battling it since he was a kid. But Robbie, unfortunately, passed earlier this year. But he was also one of my long-term players, and he loved role-playing. And so he was a pacifist cleric. So he was the healer, and he never got into combat. And so he goes up to, was it Kevin, right?
I think he went up to Robbie, but Kevin was playing Robbie's bodyguard, and Kevin was the one who actually, like, yeah.
So regardless, at one point, Robbie tries to reach over to the baddies, and he's like, "Look, you don't have to do this. It's okay." And it's going to be we can find a way to come back together. And he's trying to play the peacemaker. And so I get a ninja note, and basically they ask, is it okay if I just cut him in half? And I was like, well, if you want to just like try to kill him in one blow, you got to roll like basically a nat 20. And so they rolled and they got it. And so, like, because of all the amplification they'd had, because they took the Dark Lord's power, blah blah blah, it was like just a trillion points of damage. So I have to then go over to Robbie and explain to him, hey, I know we just started this game session that's going to last for the next 6 hours, but we have a Super Nintendo and a lot of beverages in the other room. You're more than welcome to go play there, or you can hang out with us and we can make you another character. Whatever you like, you let me know. But you did. So he very morosely was like, bullshit.
I'm going to go play PlayStation. And he walked out of the room.
He went play PlayStation for like 5 hours. And so that became the rule. If you died during this epic combat between all the players, you had to leave and go play the PlayStation in the other room.
My God.
It most fun I've ever had playing, though, Sean. The most fun session ever.
Yeah. Oh man, that was terrible. But I'm sorry, Nathan. I did not mean to drop that on you in the game. I thought you had probably gotten a phone call at that point. I'm so sorry. I'm a bad friend for not mentioning that before.
No, so I lost track of him like 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's a great story. But so, how about the rest of you guys? Have you had interesting stories like that where you've had, really great role playing moments or really great moments that you feel really kind of encapsulate what it means to be a player and how it kind of influences you at all? Obviously, we got that story from Nathan, but Dodger, is there any like one experience that you have that really kind of colors how you approach gaming now? Kind of like you pre that session and post that session.
Oh gosh, let me think about it.
The answer can be no. It's okay.
Yeah, tag me out. No,
tag out. All right, who wants to go then? Does anybody have anyone want to jump in?
Sure.
Anne, go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, I have coined the term with my friends PTSD because
nice.
I feel too much. I cry. Not just in the way that like when my character's feeling something, like I'm gonna feel it. And that's not for everybody, right? You have to know who's at your table with you. We talked about that a lot this morning. Right. So check the VOD for that. But my tables tend to be like pretty down to clown with deep RP and emotional RP. And I have really enjoyed finding other people who want to give and share that spotlight. There's nothing that I enjoy more. And I played in a 12-hour one-shot where we were all the children of a noble, and so we were all brothers and sisters. We rolled a d20 to see where we are as far as like pecking order, like the Von Trapp family, and we were all coming home to deal with what our father what we were going to do with the inheritance, basically. And the entire one shot, which was just us hanging out for an entire day, was doing this. And it was as much combat and finding traps at our terrifying dad's bad childhood induced home as it was, going off into corners and I would watch other people have scenes with each other as, siblings that hadn't seen each other in 10 years and share these really intense conversations about what they'd been doing the entire time. And there were times where we didn't roll dice for an hour and we were perfectly fine with that.
That's awesome.
I love those games.
Just in case, because I love playing bards, but I was like, I've never gotten to like sing as a bard, and I sing in the real life. And so I brought my ukulele, and I was like, I'm not going to force this to be a thing. If it is a thing, it's going to be great. And I don't know what I'm going to sing. I just know that if it happens, it's there for me if I need that tool. And we walked into a room where we discovered my dead mother's lute, her war lute. And I picked it up in game, and I got out my ukulele, and everyone's eyes were just like, is this happening? I picked a song, and I used that song to cast my spell that I was casting in that moment. And it was one of the coolest moments of just getting to take up space and realizing that, this isn't bad. If I take up space when it is my time, it isn't bad.
Right,
Prepare yourself for the moments where you're going to be able to do that. And it was what was the best part about it is that a friend of mine happened to know the song who was at the table. And so suddenly in the middle of it, I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. She began to sing the harmony, the low harmony to the song.
Oh, that's so great.
And I was
That's
just like,
awesome.
like, but yeah, so stuff like that can happen if you are open to it, but it only happens when everybody feels so safe taking and giving space.
That is awesome. But I have to ask, was it like a Bon Jovi song or something, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It was Thunder. Whoa.
There you go.
No, it was. I think it was.
That was AC/DC, I think. But
I think it was. Well, you're right. You're right. It is, and that's. I don't know. I only listen to Ren Fair and musical theater. But that's where I live. No, I sang Wild Mountain Time, which is like an old folk song. And it was great. It's good times. We all cried.
Cool.
We all sang.
I love it. So who's next? Who else has a really great experience that they remember that kind of has colored their experiences ever since then?
I'll go. Not that's colored my experiences ever since, but that kind of encapsulates my philosophy. So recently, the last game I was playing in the pre-COVID times, where we're playing in person. It was a group of people, and two of the people at the table, the table was pretty diverse. It was a bunch of old grognards, and then two people who this was really only their second campaign. They were still kind of new. They were still feeling things out. One of the players at the table, let's just say, would not have been my choice to be playing with had it not been the rest of the group. Kind of dickish towards the new players. That unfortunate grognard attitude.
Yeah.
So I generally play a bard lately because they're awesome. I don't sing. I always play oration bards. I'm always just fast talking and I'm scheming. And the DM in that game, very much, grognards, old school D&D people who kind of crusty, very crusty and set in the old ways.
Yes. Grog's got nards.
Yeah, it's they're a thing.
Yes.
But so we roll into this town. And immediately I go into bard mode because I knew the DM, this was a filler session. He needed some time to go from his last big set piece to his next one. We roll into this town, etc. And then I go into scheme mode and I start fast talking and I'm developing this whole thing where I've decided now that I'm going to take this NPC that I know the DM thought was a throwaway, this down on the luck innkeeper. And it is now my mission in life to not only develop his business to be the best inn in town, but also skim off the top on many different schemes. We had a whiteboard. There's legitimately a whiteboard in his living room where I was writing down steps of the scheme so he didn't forget. But in the middle of it, I kept making sure, because it turned into the Jeff show for a minute or five, that I would hand off. I would always stop, and I would always take either, player A or player B. I won't call them out, by name, but new guys, to make sure I pulled them into the schemes. They always had something to do if they wanted. If they didn't want to participate, cool beans, no problem. But over time, it really helped them to just kind of open up, blossom, and go do their. And by the end of the couple sessions in, and this ended up taking multiple sessions, like 4 sessions, I think, to get through all the schemes that were happening. They started developing their own schemes on their own. They had never done this before, but by acting and by showing how I think playing at the table is fun, I think gives permission for other people to go, oh, maybe I can do that too, and no one's going to give me a hard time.
Right.
And then
exactly.
by throwing them that line occasionally to try and bring them into that story, really help pull them out of their shell. And I got to tell you, it was the most fun I've had at the table in a long time. Just helping those guys out and watching them like, oh, I can do weird stuff like that too. And everyone's cool with it. Yeah, go for it, man.
That's awesome.
I want to tee up on something Jeff said there, just because I'm although I've never heard the term before, I know what you're talking about with the grognards. The thing that frustrates me as a DM and as a player is when people with a lot of experience roll in and they say, this isn't how you play D&D. This is how you play D&D. And they start limiting newer players by telling them, no, you have to do this, you have to do that, either on their character sheet or with their choices as a character. And like the thing like, oh, well, we have to have the party balance, so we have to have, you have to be this class or this class. And I'm always like, that's on me as the DM. if it's an unbalanced party, then it's an unbalanced party, and I need to give you guys, scenarios that fit your party. And it doesn't have to be like, well, you need the healer, the wizard, the warrior, and the skill person, it doesn't have to be. But there's so many people that they grew up where that was like the way you do it, and they insist that it has to be done that way. And so that's advice for people not to be that way.
Don't be that. Totally.
Don't limit people.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So, Dodger, do you have a story yet, or should we go over to Mr. Faulkner?
No
story. Fair enough. All right. So we're going to pass on Dodger. Mr. Faulkner, do you have a story that particularly lights up your brain?
Well, I mean, it's probably the opposite side of Jeff's, where I was the new player when I first started picking up the dice and stuff. Growing up in Utah in the 80s, D&D was part of that satanic panic, right? Everyone was like, it was like, oh no, you can't do that. It's evil. It's bad. It's whatever. So when I'm in college in the early 2000s and someone says, hey, let's play D&D, I'm like, I've never heard of this. I know you put, 2 letters and an ampersand in the middle and you got D&D. That's about it. And so he took me over to his house after classes one day, and we sat down and started going through stuff. And he opened the rule book. He's talking about how you build a character, roll the dice, etc. What's going on with this? And he looks over at me, and I've got this ear-to-ear grin just splitting my face. And he's like, what's going on? What did I say? Something funny? What's going on? Like, no, man, look, I am a storyteller. This is the kind of stuff I am. It's a brand new world to me. You just open up a door for me. And that was what really colored, any RPG from that point forward was like, I can do whatever I want. I'm not a theater kid. I just love telling stories. I love good storytelling. And that was my moment to like, I can do this. I can make this happen. And that's why I tell new players all the time, who are like, I don't know if I can do it. Like anybody can play this game.
Yes.
There is no style. There is no set way of doing it. You just got to follow the rules that are in the book, and they're really simple. You roll some dice, add some numbers together, you're good to go. And if you find something comfortable to do, and that's your niche, do it. And as a veteran player, kind of like Jeff does now, I pull people in and help them. Like, well, have you considered this? I know your personality. If you consider doing this with your character, and that's really how all that has colored my ability to play this game.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great example of just what you can do when you start thinking outside of your own little box. Because, and I don't mean to say it's little, but I'm just saying, like, when you're not thinking of just your little area of what you're controlling, and you start looking outside, you're like, oh, well, if I do this, or I may make this suggestion, maybe this person can go off and have this adventure, and you start to get invested in them. Which is why I was like, if you invest your time into your fellow players' characters and their motivations, you start to have more fun, because you'll find ways of either derailing their stories in interesting, like kind of ways, or you'll help them achieve their goals. Either way, in my opinion, it is good role-playing time, because that means that you're moving the story forward, and you're collectively building that tale.
Something that's been going on at my table right now is that we have somebody who, in a one-off scene, revealed with their GM, and it's streamed, so like we are watching it, right? We have this meta knowledge that our characters don't have, that they have been backstabbing us since they joined the tale. We now know this, and so everybody is always asking, like, when are you going to figure it out? And I was like, I don't know, but at every turn, I am going to make that hurt like a son of a bitch. Right. So every time my character is so loving and assuming. She's just like a giant wolf dog lady, and she just wants to be the best captain she can be. And so every time I have a chance to give him access to like my computer, or it's a sci-fi game, right? It's Starfinder. Right. I was like, access to like make big decisions for our town. Like, I just give it to him because they're best friends, and why wouldn't she? And everyone's like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, because we don't know. And that the fact that you guys do know, that makes this storytelling even more fun for you as an audience.
Because their anxiety is going up the whole time, because they're like, it's going to happen. And they're just, you know it. You're like watching a horror movie, like, like you want to see it, but you kind of don't at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I'm in a couple of different streamed shows currently that both exist within like worlds that have multiple games going on. So it's like one universe with a bunch of games happening parallel, right? Sure. So they can all affect each other. They can all, something big can happen that can mess up everybody else's games. It's very fun. It's really cool. But you as a player wind up with a lot of knowledge that your character does not have. And like maybe somebody who is watching a stream of another game will immediately come to you and be like, oh my God, did you hear that like this happened with your patron? Like, what are you going to do? And it's like, nothing. Cause my warlock doesn't know that. Right?
Oh, don't you hate it when you get meta knowledge and you can't act on it? Oh, that's a bitch.
Yep.
But like,
I love
that
it.
happens all the time, you know, and it, yeah, for sure. Of course, you wanna be like, oh God, I really want to go talk to that guy, but my character wouldn't talk to that guy. They have no reason to do it, you know.
You just have to walk away from it. Yeah.
I used to play with a very frustrating person who had memorized the monster manual for D&D. And so it's like, this is the first time you're encountering this monster. You're like railing off like, well, I know how much health it has and I know it can do these things. And I'm like, you can't act on that. You know, you don't know this. But
I think I want to know what everybody thinks about like meta. Like, how do you deal with what your character knows and what they don't? Like, how do you balance that at the table?
I mean,
that's almost a DM question, really, because I think a DM allows that more than anybody else. It's like the DM knows if you're playing on meta knowledge. So if you start acting in a certain way, it's like, well, don't forget, you may not know that yet. So, but some people they like to play it a little more loosey goosey. So I think it depends on the kind of game you're playing and how flexible your DM's going to be.
I just keep extensive notes. I just take a lot of notes, and if like somebody had a conversation about something and my character was not there, I might still take notes about it, but I try to be really specific. Like, this was a conversation between these two characters, etc. You know, so like just as a reminder to myself when I'm going through my notes, like, do I know that? No, I don't know that.
Right. Yeah.
As a player, when we're like discussing how we want to, you know, go along with a combat or something, like maybe I'll bring that up because somebody in the group does know that. But in role play, I won't bring up things that I don't know.
And I was actually going to go back for a second. I was going to rewind for a moment, which was I was going to tell you guys about a story where I was so impressed with my players because they pulled off something that I never would have given them credit for. Because, well, actually, I shouldn't say that because they frequently... There were those people that say, hey, if we jump off this building, the bushes at the bottom will break our fall. And they'll frequently be those cats, right? And they'll find a way to survive. And this particular story is the most crazy thing I think that's ever happened to me in a role-playing game. And this was a one-off moment where basically they were racing against another group of adventurers and they had to go find the MacGuffin. And so they have to travel up to the top of this mountain and they have to get the thing from a giant rock. And a rock, by the way, is basically just a huge bird for those of you who are unfamiliar with this term. So the players get to the top of the mountain after many, many obstacles get in their way. And they find out that the other team has beaten them to it. They have not only gotten the MacGuffin from the rock, but they've also killed the rock, which was, in theory, going to be their way down. They're like, oh, crap, how the hell do we get down? So these guys say, wait a minute, is there any brush or any kind of trees on the top of this mountain top? And I was like, yeah, there's actually quite a few trees. So they proceed to chop down the trees. And over the span of an entire game session, literally the whole game session derailed because they wanted to make basically an exoskeleton out of trees, twine, and whatnot. And they basically made a glider out of the dead bird's body that they could ride on. And so then they made a little ramp and they were going to slide off. And they basically asked me, well, how much time would this really save us versus us going all the way back down the mountain and walking to the next location? And I said, if you pull this off, it'll save you almost a full day's travel. And they're like, we're doing it. So the whole game session is me writing up rules on the fly, them coming up with questions, me going, okay, give me a second. I'm coming back. And they get to the moment where they're on the side. They've built the ramp. Laura at the time is their spellcaster. She comes up with a force spell and basically just knocks them off the side of the damn mountain. The first thing that happens is the bird hits a very sharp rock as it starts to leave the side of the mountain, ripping open its guts, and they rain gore and blood and viscera all over the countryside. So then they're on this bird, and there's like this pulley mechanism they've made, and everybody has to make strength checks and constitution checks to kind of keep it going. And I'm like, these players are insane. They're never going to land this thing. And over the span of 10 turns, they're able to continually make their rolls, and they're getting closer and closer to the ground. I'm like, this is amazing. Oh my God, they're going to pull this off. And then somebody rolled a 1. So all of a sudden, the bird's neck snaps down. It catches the very front of the ground. It throws Christina's characters off, who actually survived because she wasn't even there for this game. So she was being proxied. Now, wouldn't that have been a bitch? You die because you're not even there. And she gets thrown off, and the rest of the characters basically brace, and they fall, and they crash, and they have this entire moment where they're like, it's like the end of Cool Runnings, where they're all going, hey, are you dead? And they all lived, and they actually got ahead of the other group. They were able to gain all this time, all because somebody said, hey, could we push this bird off the side of a mountain and ride it down to get some time? And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? But it was such a great character moment because they all bonded together. I mean, they were so just into this project. And it was like, you know what it was like? It was like watching a bunch of kids who were about to make the volcano explode for the first time with like baking soda and stuff. Like they were just into the minutia of this. And I loved that about that session. It's one of my favorite moments in the history of all of D&D because it went dark, it went funny, it was all over the place, and I love that about them. So I wanted to share that. But we're starting to wind down. We have right at 10 minutes here, and I do have a really great question from the audience that I think would be cool, and I'm going to roll back up so I can pull it out here. It's actually from Laura. She wants to ask everybody, what is your favorite character that you've ever played? Now, obviously, we can't get into too much detail, but if you do have a favorite character, just let us know a little bit about them. And I'm going to start with... I know. So I'm going to start. Right? I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with Mr. Faulkner. I think he's probably going to have a good one for us. So, what was your favorite character that you've ever played?
Every character before this one, I'd always played rogues, and I wanted to break out of that. And so the DM, actually, we all know it was Gary Mitchell. Mm-hmm. He looked at me and said, "Okay, well, what about a monk?" I said, "Well, I've never thought about a monk, but okay, let's take a look at this." Mm-hmm. And we played this monk for a while. I obviously put my highest stat that I rolled into dexterity because you do your thing. It's been really quite fun playing that character because he can roll high initiative. He rushes into battle all the time. He's throwing that quarterstaff around and just kicking a lot of butt. Mm-hmm. But I built into that same character the concept, as a monk, you don't want material wealth. You don't care about that kind of thing. You've got your robes, you've got your sandals, you got your staff. You're good to go. And so you get all your other players who are like, well, I need to save up for this awesome new sword over here, and I don't have enough. And my character would literally just reach down, grab the gold bag off his belt, and say, "Take what you need, keep the rest. Do whatever you want with it." It's that kind of character where it's almost a polar opposite from the rogue who's like, "Give me all the cash." Right. This one's just like, "I don't care. I'm just in it for the need to go out and do good in the world. So let's roll."
I love that. That's great.
That's been my favorite. Growing into that character.
Very cool. Okay, so Dodger, this time you can't pass. You got to give us one.
I know. So. Specifically, D&D character is probably a character that it's on hiatus, but it's a character that I'm currently playing named Zacharias. I really love patron warlock relationships where it is like not super copacetic, like one of them hates the other, or it's a big accident, or like something like that, right? Right. And we wound up developing this warlock whose patron is essentially like the personification of greed and like gambling. And my character lost a bet with this patron who is like pretending to be a normal guy at a table, and so became his warlock as like a form of like you're indebted to me and you have to do everything that I say. Right. And over the course of the story so far, it's been very cool because he's like gone from like literally having to do anything that his patron asks of him and being completely under his boot to getting into a position of like having a little bit of like power and leeway and saying, I like the power that you've given me, but this needs to be a partnership now. Right. And like the character development there and the like growth of confidence and stuff has been really, really fun to role play and to also like, I think sometimes when playing a warlock, you don't really interact with your patron very much. So it's been really fun to like actively interact with my patron like throughout the game. Yeah. That's been a ton of fun.
It's funny, Dodger. You mentioned that, and Laura for a long time was playing a warlock in our previous game. And at one point, because of short decisions that certain people named Christina made, they wound up getting Laura's patron killed. So because
her patron almost died.
Yeah, her patron actually died. But the way I worked the rules was that because she was the only one who was devout to him at that moment, he basically bequeathed her the whole motherload of energy. So she was able to continue to expand on her power base. And ultimately, because she was a tiefling, her decision was she went down into the 9 levels of hell, killed one of the overlords, basically said, this is now the tiefling kingdoms. So when you come to hell, you can come live here and we're not going to torture you, because she'd gotten that much juice from her patron. So
insane.
Yeah, I mean, now to be fair, they went to level 30 on that one. So we're talking epic level stuff. But
Right.
yeah, so that was pretty fun. But Nathan, how about you? Like, can you tell us a little bit about your favorite character? And I'm curious if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh, I think it's the one that you're thinking, Sean.
Okay.
So it started out as the concept of I want to play medieval Batman. And it wasn't even D&D. It was actually Mechton Z, which is a mecha anime type game. But Sean had done this reality switch within the game where it went from a science fiction based world to a medieval one. And Sean had like created all these new rules and everything within the system. You know,
I was very ambitious as a teenager.
Right. And so it was a D10 based system, not that really matters. But, you know, so as medieval Batman, I got to do things like have all the equipment and everything, even surprising Sean sometimes, where it's like he expected us to go this particular way. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, how much rope do we need? It's
you
like
and that damn rope, man. I'm still mad about that fucking
I was like,
rope.
oh, looky here on my belt. That's how much rope I have. And so we were able to climb, to a place and do something that we weren't supposed to be able to do.
Right.
But, but the best thing about it, because this is what, through collaboration, and this is another advice I give to players, is collaborate with your DM on the character creation, because a lot of times you can spark ideas off each other that you wouldn't have had before. And we came up with the idea of, actually, this person is not Batman. He is this horrible criminal with who doesn't remember who he is. He has been so damaged and traumatized that he knows all this stuff about all these criminal organizations, but he doesn't know why. And he's going out and hunting them.
Right.
And he never takes his mask off.
Right, and you forgot the big twist was that he was always hunting down his version of the Joker, and what he comes to find out is he is the Joker.
Right, exactly. And
Nice.
that's the thing in the game, is we're hunting for this guy as a party.
Yes.
And none of them know that it's me.
He's the bad guy.
Right. And so it was beautiful. I mean, it went on for a good while, and it was so satisfying. The whole idea, we played through the integration of the character, the getting the memories back and all of that. And it was so amazing just how that played out, and the interactions and everything with everybody. And that's the game also where we split as a party.
Yes.
Which was, so much fun. And the other part of that game that was so much fun, Sean, that I wanted to mention that we didn't talk about is the final fight, when it was just Kevin and I as the only two people left.
Yeah, the big climax of that entire game was two players facing off against each other. Yeah.
Right. And so in Mechton, you have to roll for your dodge. It's not just like a straight AC or anything like that.
Right.
Basically, your armor is just damage reduction. And Kevin's sword was so good that one more hit from his sword would kill me. This is a D10 system. I rolled 7 10s in a row.
Yes. So imagine rolling that many 20s.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things that you can't make it happen. And so there's no way to tip it for players. But when you have those moments of where just everything comes together and you have this, this scenario that just works out for you, that can really just make a game so satisfying. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great one, sir. I figured that was where you're going, but I was wanting to hear, because maybe you've had a better experience. I don't know. I don't know,
sure.
But it does fill me full of warm fuzzies that's still your favorite. How about you, Jeff? What's your favorite character that you can recall?
Oh man, I'm going to go with the character that I just recently was talking about. So in this previous game, so his name is Titus Laponius Hollister VII. He is a rogue bard fighter multi-class. And it's weird. It's weird, but it works really well. And he has the Charlton background. My favorite thing about him is growing up, he realized, that he looked just like this specific son of a nobleman, and then just decided to impersonate him all over the landscape.
Amazing.
So the whole shtick was, I was the noble born. Everyone else in my party hated nobles, and they just were giving me this hard time all the time. And for a year straight, I kept that going, to where everyone in the group thought I really was that nobleman. The reveal when it happened was chef's kiss, beautiful. The DM finally was like, man, you have been pulling this off for a long time. I'm going to hit you with some backstory stuff. And I'm like, yeah, bring it, man. That's going to be fun. And I was able to go ahead and, he brought someone in from my past to encounter me in front of the group. And I had to drop my accent and I started talking in a different voice. And everyone around the table is looking at me like this. What? Wait, what? This whole time you're not rich. You're actually poor. As dirt, poor as dirt. I got nothing. All that stuff I promised you guys. Nope, I'm full of shit. It was great because it was with a group for the most part that was accepting of the fact that I had been bamboozling them. I wasn't doing it maliciously. I wasn't stealing from the party. I was just not being honest about things, and it was wonderful fun.
Yeah. So Laura wants to know: is that a trifle? Yes, that is 100% a trifle. So yeah, Jeff, you were trifling, but that's a wonderful trifle. But we're almost out of time. So Anne, I'm going to give you the final word and then we're going to get out of here. Tell us about your character and then we are going to bounce.
You got it. Well, it'll be easy to start because it's the same character I was talking about from the one shot. So I created that character and we had spent months, kind of like you did with your group separating for that week where the kids from different parts of the marriage, like we're all talking together in Discord and creating our histories and all this stuff. And then we played in this bright burn of 12-hour glory and then it was gone. Yeah. And, I really felt like Calliope Rhymestaff is her name. And she's a bard. She's a glamour
I love these
bard.
names. The names are great.
And she, sat there and I thought about the idea that like she was the youngest of the siblings and her story was over, like her book was shelved. And the idea that like our GM, came up with this awesome epilogue where everybody was getting all this stuff. And I married like the stable boy who was actually a dragon protecting the family the whole time. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was so over the top and like everyone was crying. And then I just thought about this poor woman who is 25 years old and has done everything cool in the world that there is to do. And then her husband's like, well, I'm a dragon, so your life is great now. Like, and then they have 2 sons and she's like, cool. Now I'm just like a stay-at-home bard mom with a very small audience.
With a very small audience.
This is not exactly like the best. And because of like some of the deep cuts that happened in the family, I just kept thinking like this character's story isn't actually told. I am so lucky. This is the backstory. This is the backstory for my next like campaign character. And it's great because I've lived it and I felt it. I don't have to like do the work of trying to like connect. And so I have been now playing this character 10 years later as a 32-year-old mom who has abandoned her perfect family for reasons. And it's been, and she's the healer and everybody thinks she's just like this lovely noble woman, but she is a real piece of work. And it has been the treat of my lifetime to take the ingenue and to make her like not that.
Yeah.
So that's been my favorite. And I think it's important that people remember they can return to characters. Like if you don't feel like you finished them, like retool them, even if you got to level them back, right? Like just retool them, get to live the rest of that story. You don't have to shelve a book you're not done reading.
Absolutely. No, I think that's also that's actually a really great final tip to have, which is if you really love a character, talk to your DM, find a way to bring that character back. There is no reason. In fact, Laura has been I wouldn't say boycotting, but has been lobbying to find a way to bring back that tiefling warlock Cerulean to our new game, but she doesn't want to give up Hell. So she's having a hard Sophie's choice where she's like, I have to give up Hell if I want to become a player character again. And so far, keeping Hell has outweighed being a playable character again. But I think one day she's going to make that call. But everybody, thank you so much. These were awesome stories. This went so fantastically well. We're only a couple minutes over. So for those of you who stuck around for the whole thing, again, I want to thank you all so much for watching. For those of you who are on the panel, Jeff, Ann, Michael, Dodger, Nathan, guys, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for hanging with me for the last hour and change. I love it. You guys had so much great advice, and I love the stories. They're all great. I wanted to sit in and like eat popcorn and like listen to all your stories now. But it was so much fun. But thank you all so much for watching. And this was D&D tips and tricks for players. If you do have a chance, in about 20 minutes, we're going to be starting up our 9:30 show, which is going to be VHS, vinyl, and flea markets, which specifically is going to be about how people got their fandom together pre-internet. You know, how were you able to find out about that new cool anime or that awesome cool new comic book when you didn't have the internet at your fingertips? And we're going to talk about all kinds of different scenarios. So I do encourage you to come back. It's going to be a fantastic hour. And again, thank you all so much. And if you do get a chance, go make sure to check out our website over there at popcycledbaubles.com. Maybe drop some ducats if you like, but if not, that's okay. Just keep coming back and watching us, and you're all cool as cool. So again, thank you all panelists. You're all amazing, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. So until then, thanks for all of us here at Popcycled and Pop Con, and we'll catch you in about 20 minutes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.